People in every time and place have harbored fears of the restless dead. In medieval England, those who ended their own lives were buried at crossroads to prevent their tormented spirits from returning to wreak havoc on the community. In Haiti, some live in fear of being made into a zombie, one of the living dead in thrall of a witch doctor. Even today in 21st century America, many fear the modern zombie, walking incarnation of death and pestilence. But a far older folkloric beast has haunted human nightmares throughout the ages: the vampire. While stories vary from culture to culture, the basic concept is the same. Vampires are humans who continue to live after death, who need the blood of the living to continue their unholy existence. Considered superstition today, they are very real to people of the past who went to extreme lengths to safeguard their communities against the vampiric threat. Hello, everyone. Giant Stonehead here. If you enjoy obscure science and forgotten history, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Now, let's talk about some bizarre profane burials. Skeletons subjected to profane burial meant to protect the community from vampires have been discovered in several European countries, including Poland, Italy, and Bulgaria, and also in New England, here in the United States. The macabre methods used to destroy the undead monsters varied widely. Methods included placing bricks in the mouth, decapitating the corpse and putting the head between the feet, staking through the heart with iron rods, or burial with a scythe placed blade down over the neck, as seen here. Occasionally, bodies were buried face down so that the corpse reanimated, it would dig deeper into the earth rather than be able to emerge and assault the living. Sometimes suspected vampires might be buried in coffins rather than winding sheets, so that they'd have a harder time escaping when they woke up. In England, the bizarre burial of a man was found with his head and upper leg bones arranged in a skull and crossbone pattern. These bizarre burials tended to correlate with disease outbreaks, and they were likely a community response to try to curb disease and assuage fear. Two diseases in particular seem strongly linked to vampirism: rabies and tuberculosis. Rabies is a virus that spreads via bodily fluids, particularly saliva of infected animals. Virus can be dormant for long periods of time, and when it becomes symptomatic, death is all but assured. It begins with flu-like symptoms, but in the late stages, symptoms become more extreme and include hydrophobia, which is an aversion to water, sensitivity to light, depression, anxiety, delirium, increased saliva production, and eventually death. It's thought that some of the folklore around vampires developed after outbreaks of rabies, when deranged individuals suffering the late stages of the infection could be found wandering at night due to their light sensitivity, showing aggressive behavior. It is an interesting correlation that vampires were often reported to shapeshift into wolves and bats, two animals associated with the transmission of rabies, perhaps strengthening the link between the disease and the folklore. Tuberculosis is an airborne bacteria that typically infects the lungs. Onset of symptoms could take months, beginning with a fever and leading to coughing, fatigue, weight loss, chills, and night sweats. It was typically called consumption because victims of the disease would lose weight, fading away and appearing to be consumed. Not much of a leap to connect the appearance of one infected with tuberculosis to that of a person drained of blood. So the correlation was made that someone must have been stealing that blood. In addition, tuberculosis doesn't spread as readily as other respiratory diseases such as influenza, more likely to spread to people who are in constant contact with the individual, such as family or caretakers. This might explain one piece of vampiric folklore that is often overlooked in the modern world of vampire cinema and stories. Old world vampires tended to torment their own families in particular, rather than random strangers. Let's illustrate then how a hypothetical vampire panic might have begun. Say a member of a family came down with tuberculosis. They grow progressively sicker and eventually pass away. Then another family member falls ill with the same ailment, weeks, perhaps months later after the original death. They might then begin to suspect vampirism, especially if another member of the family would become sick. If vampirism was suspected, the family might dig up the body of the original deceased. Decomposition was not a process that was well understood back then, so they might see a body with blood around its mouth, pushed out by gases generated by decomposition. It would appear then that the body had been feeding, perhaps, on the family members, forcing the belief that the illness plaguing the family was due to vampiric predation. Next step then would be to ritually desecrate the body in order to protect the family from the now undead relative, using the methods outlined earlier. This would do nothing to actually stem the tide of infection, but it'll give some sense of control over the unknown. And the rituals were effective in that sense, if no other. Still more to learn about the connection between vampire folklore, profane burials, and epidemic disease, because not every desecrated body was known to have suffered from tuberculosis or any known disease that can be discerned from their remains, which can be difficult if there's only a skeleton left. TB can leave marks on the skeleton, but others might not. So, unless there's some sort of record, we wouldn't really have a way to know what they passed away from. And there's been plenty burials found where the skeletons are not observably different from any other skeleton buried around them except for the profane burial. So it's not really clear then what the exact criteria were that made somebody prone to becoming a vampire. Clear that generally speaking, becoming a vampire was something that happened to someone rather than something they did deliberately. Uh, their dead bodies were then seen to be as taken over from an entity rather than some inherent evil in the person coming to life after they passed away. But then there's some contradicting evidence about this belief system because there's evidence in Poland that suggests that those who suffered from desecration could have emigrated from other parts of Europe. So social class and standing in the community must have played some sort of a role in determining who was a vampire and who wasn't. So we're not exactly sure what people at that time believed about vampires who became a vampire and how exactly they came to the ghoulish acts of desecration as a solution to the vampire problem. However, the belief in vampires is not limited to the distant past. Plenty of people today continue to believe in the undead. As recently as the mid 2000s, reports out of Romania describe villagers disinterring the body of a suspected vampire and burning its heart. Image related, if engraving from something far older, but you get the gist of what happened. There are also those who embrace vampirism more as a lifestyle. There's a subculture of vampires who feed on blood, be it animal or human, and there are vampires who are psychic vampires who believe they feed on the psychic energy of other humans. Strange, perhaps, but do affect attest to the lasting impact that vampires have on the human psyche. The appeal to something primal in our mind, the innate fear of death we all carry. Because of that, vampires will likely remain a part of human culture for all time. I want to try something a little bit different this week. I'd found an old blog post of mine and adapted it to this format, somewhat like topics that skirt the edges of horror, the supernatural, and actual science. So I'm thinking there might be more videos around folklore and folk beliefs in the future. I have one in the works about Haitian voodoo zombies, also adapted from an old blog post. And I believe that old blog had a it had an entry about the aforementioned Crossroads burials. I believe I gotta try to find it. I don't remember if I dug that one up or not, but I think that'll also be a video at some point. But what do you think? Do you like this sort of less hard science, more loosey goosey look into folklore and cultural aspects of sort of odd behaviors? If you do, please feel free to like, comment, share, and subscribe. I'll be posting here weekly. If there's anything you'd like me to cover next, let me know. And until next time, thanks for watching, and maybe hang a little bit of garlic over the window, just in case.